welcome everyone to the CTV revolution. We're going to be talking a lot about streaming TV today, which is what I think we should probably start calling it, not CTV and all these acronyms like over the top. But specifically, there's a lot of change going on. A lot of TV dollars are moving into this medium. There's a lot of performance advertisers now investing in streaming TV. And we're going to focus the panel on three topics. Navigating signal loss. Many don't think that cookies going away affects CTV, but in some ways it does, right, because of data graphs. So we're going to talk about that as new privacy laws go into effect and new tech changes. We're going to talk about fragmentation in CTV and all these different supply sources that we've got some amazing panelists like Magnite on the panel here today that are solving those issues. And then how to improve performance and really talk about attention and relevance, some of these really exciting new topics. So in that topic specifically, there's a lot of new research coming out about how viewer attention is highly correlated to relevance, and specifically when you can actually match ad creative and content. GumGum, who's on the panel, has recently done research on this, as has PMG, formerly Camelot. So we're really excited to get into those topics. And I think just to start, we'll have everyone introduce themselves as we jump in. So right now, when we're talking about streaming TV, let's talk about some of the big areas of focus for you. And Sam, if you'd kick us off.
Well, first of all, Sam Bloom, PMG, and Lead Partnerships. Well, look, I mean, this category is explosive right now, and there are so many different areas that things are going on. I mean, one is, I think the first piece is just we see massive, share shift going from linear to CTV, and we're seeing it across the board. Explosion of, ad-supported, content. And I think the big news of the year, clearly Amazon jumping in, massive, huge content library and massive push through it. And then, but we see tons of innovation across everybody in the footprint. We see lots of big trends around how the ad inventory is being, done differently, going supply direct in many cases. And we see a lot of innovation on the tech side with companies like IRIS, GumGum, and others. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. So I think we feel very bullish about it, that the headline, I think, for most advertisers is, even if there's a decline in TV, we have a way to reach consumers in a smarter, better way. And so there's a lot of efficient ways to go do that. So there's a from-to strategy for most advertisers, in our opinion.
I want to hear more about that kind of share that you're seeing, some of your advertisers, big TV advertisers shifting. Horizon's been leading the front on that. Jean-Marc?
Yeah, so thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jean-Marc Papin from Horizon Media, so I'm in charge of the media technology and data group. So here, I mean, our approach is really about having a solid identity spine. Like, we have built an identity platform like a few years ago already that we have been curating. And really what the objective is always for us is to have like the best addressability as possible and the best measurement, right? So to do that, I mean, today we see, obviously, I mean, you mentioned a signal loss situation, but we see that we have more and more tools and the technology, the AI, and I think we talk about this, right? AI and all the identity integration that we can get across the ecosystem. You can actually fill the gap. With the signal loss that we are getting. But I think we will talk about it a little bit further.
Phil?
Hi. Phil Schrader. I'm the CEO of GumGum. Thanks for having me. And if you're not familiar with GumGum, we're a global advertising platform. And we focus on working with advertisers to really help them tap into the moments that matter for consumers and really get into the active mindset of that consumer. And we do that through leveraging our advanced AI contextual technology. And specifically in the application of that, and with CTV, such an emerging, obviously, growth sector and all the eyeballs of consumers going there, I think the key is with signal loss, with a lot of different things, it's also a big opportunity now for technology to get into that content at scale and really start to provide very specific insights into what that consumer is feeling and experiencing when engaging in that content. And that's what I'm excited to really highlight a little bit in this panel, the power and magic an advertiser can have through the ability to deliver that moment of an experience now that CTV is growing and the technologies like GumGums are able to help make that happen. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this.
Excellent. And LG's had explosive growth in this space. Ed, it's great to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you. I'm Ed Whale, VP International at LG Ad Solutions. We are the advertising arm for LG Smart TVs, which is obviously second largest smart TV manufacturer in the world. I mean, as the owner of the screen, we kind of sit at the center of the ecosystem, right, of big screen viewing. We've spoken about the shift from linear to streaming. That's certainly happening in every market in the world, but at different speeds. So, you know, perhaps most advanced in the US, but as you move into Europe, we're still in a very much a transition point. So, you know, what we're focused on is supporting kind of all sides of the industry to be able to manage, I guess, fragmentation across these different environments. And equally, the media and entertainment vertical for us in streaming is really, really important, right? On the home screen, content owners are re-engaging lapsed users, they're acquiring new audiences, and they're trying to, you know, utilize this new sort of streaming surface, right, that they have to play with. So that's a huge focus for us. We're also a publisher of our own. We have a fast channel service, LG Channels, and that's a huge area of investment for us as well.
And then most of us have seen ads served by Magnite. They're one of the biggest in the space. Mike, it's so good to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike LeBand from Magnite. I think for us, big investments in prioritization this year would be, so streaming is exploding. We're seeing tons of content come on board, amazing shows, but live sports is a massive area for us and a focus. In addition to live, we see a lot of opportunity on more of a, we'll call it native tile opportunities within not only OEMs like LG, but also in various different fast services. But behind all of that, we see a major opportunity when it comes to things like taking audience enablement across those different types of verticals, but then also things like contextual. So we'll talk more about that later in the panel too.
So let's jump in on signal loss. I'm going to come back to you, Mike, right? So we've seen a huge growth in the U.S. market, and Ed, it'd be great to talk more a little bit about FAST and kind of which markets you're seeing grow the fastest outside of the U.S., but in the U.S., there's now a lot of different privacy laws going into effect. We obviously know cookies are going away. Some analysts have predicted that match rates might be as low as 20%, right? Magnite being one of the biggest platforms out there, I think it'd be great to hear kind of your point of view, because I think there's been a lot of hype about this and then not really a lot of challenges quite yet, you know? So it'd be great to hear how Magnite's been navigating those shifts.
Yeah, certainly. So we operate different parts of our business. We have our display online video business, which is a completely separate tech stack for us. We also have, you know, a part of this discussion, our streaming stack, which is our SpringServe ad server, as well as our streaming SSP. In those worlds, we've always lived in a world where major companies wanted to remove specific items in the bid request out to buyers. So obfuscating different things like IFAs, device IDs, removing things like IP. So we've somewhat interacted in a world like this for a long time on our streaming side. And so as a result of that, we've had to develop technologies to allow media companies that were very concerned about passing different types of data in the bid request to be able to still filter that within their SSP or their ad stack, but then set up deals against that to not pass it out to the buy side. Well, now you fast forward to everything that's been happening over the last few years with this element of signal loss, and I think from an area of investment for us, it's still not only areas of audience enablement and bringing publisher first-party data or leveraging third-party data, it's also contextual. And I do think there's going to be a winner in that area as more media companies are continuing to look at how can I pass signals with that relevancy versus more on the audience side. And that's been, I think, pretty exciting to see. I know some recent press that Camelot and Sam did recently was pretty unique about that. I'm sure he'll talk more about that, but it's I think it's going to be a growth area significantly for us this year.
And Jean-Marc, you guys have built new solutions to help clients with this across all formats. It'd be great to hear more about some of those new technologies.
Yeah, for sure. So here, I mean, you pronounce a magic word for me, which is the match rates, right? So I think there is a big misunderstanding across the industry around match rates because people don't really understand what it means, right? The big problem we have to solve in that industry across the board with match rate is the precision. So you can have a 90% match rate and it can be extremely imprecise. And guess what? You are targeting an audience with a great match rate and you get results which are completely crappy and you don't have a match rate back. So, I mean, sometimes it's a third grades, or CE2, so for the French people, math that we have to solve that people are not able to do. So I think that's why, I mean, there is a belief, in my opinion, that pure identity deterministic is amazing. It's a very powerful tool which can be put in everyone's hands. I love that what we are doing is we are trying actually to connect our identity, our like first party, pure identity, first name, last name, emails, device IDs, phone numbers, etc., which is like extremely precise, with contextual signals that are really like, because I think we maybe have a fuzzier match in terms of identity match, but way more precise at the moment to actually build our audience to target and measure back, which is very important. For us, we have to do back and forth. Clients only value what we do if we are able to measure what we actually activate on. That's my point of view.
Let's talk more about that later with some of that new research your team led, because I think the way that you guys, pulled that together was incredible.
Well, I think that the headline is, first of all, I'll go down the panel because this is like the supply chain that we tend to work out. Jean-Marc is exactly right. Identity, when you're starting to work with identity, we want to work directly with those content providers that have a relationship with the consumer. When people start talking about match rates and other things, you want to bring, like if you have a client that's got 50, 60 million, customers in their data file, that's a significant asset, and being able to go to a large publisher to be able to do things with them, very important. But the second piece is, then you start working with the content provider. They don't want to give you, obviously, show level kinds of things, generally speaking. And so we have to find other ways to program our advertising, if you will. And what we found, particularly working with, IRIS and obviously the Gums of the world, is that we can do contextual placements against these first-party spines. And what's been surprising to us is sentiment and content contextual analysis has led to massive sales lift in one of our major clients, which is Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. And they're a great example of an advertiser where we have very specific audiences we're trying to reach because they have a ton of stores. We're trying to make sure that our ads stand out, and we're trying to make sure our propositions pop. And so contextual targeting has been amazing. And I think one of the things when you think about the outcomes that Jean-Marc is talking about is sometimes we don't know the why. Contextual targeting is giving us answers to the why certain advertising is working. And so it allows us to get our ads in places where we can be way more efficient but way more effective without just simply looking at cost pers or LTV and those kinds of things. So we understand why they're working. Happy content better than sad content, comedy, sports, genres. And then when you think about the things that Magnite is enabling, we can do things at the ad server level where we can find very specific types of things. Once we dial into what works, we can go find more of them, with an IRIS ID and other things along those lines. So.
Yeah, I think that's just a great example for big advertisers that were doing national TV buys, right? Like Carl's Jr. They're in 140 different markets, right? They have stores all over. Starting to use CTV to actually use the kind of promise of data, kind of get into those right environments and then reach them at the right time. It's really exciting.
Well, and it's interesting, and with Carl's and Hardee's, two really different brands, two really different demographics, really different patches of the country. So you can run different plays in the playbook against those audiences and those customers. And so that's one of the things, is it doesn't have to be monolithic, and that's the key piece on this.
Yeah. And so jumping into fragmentation, because it's been hard to do this at scale as there's so many different CTV channels. LG kind of originated some of the kind of first solutions for this and kind of building a data graph around ACR, understanding what people are watching and then making it possible to target those viewers. Like, Ed, do you want to talk a little bit more about how you guys have solved for fragmentation?
I think there's a few different points. So one on the fast channel service, there's a plethora of different deals out there with content owners. Often inventory is split, right, between two areas. And so one thing that we've been doing is try to take full ownership of all the inventory across of our platforms so that we can really standardize all of the signals that we're sending across in the bid stream. I'd say the other piece is that, yes, there's logged in and not logged in, but there's lots of different streaming environments as well, right? And I think tying together those audiences and these different kind of walled gardens is a perennial challenge. It's not one that's really been solved, and I think, you know, that's an area where OEMs as a kind of discoverability platform can help brands to find, you know, pockets of incrementality on devices that we deterministically know was in an app or not in a particular app, or was exposed to a linear ad or not exposed to a linear ad. And that's really, you know, the key areas, I'd say, what we're focusing on.
And Mike, you guys have been tackling this issue for years.
I think a big theme of this and just the panel in general is it's all about the user experience. We've talked a lot about what it means for media owners and media companies. We talk a lot about what it means for brands. But at the end of the day, it's what can we do to help deliver and work with both sides to the end user. So a more, you know, obviously tons of data shows that the more relevant an ad is to you, using things like ACR or contextual is obviously going to land better with the user itself. I know for myself that's certainly the case. But that obviously backs out from a performance perspective back to the buyer as well. So for us, you know, what can we do to invest more to enable companies like LG and others to onboard data if they would like to go that route and allow them to use that? If they want to use contextual, doing that as well in a similar fashion, using segments or passing IDs along, because I do think that's becoming more popular. And then lastly, just overall experience of what it means to deliver a high mezzanine file into a place that is a streaming service is not a small thing. It's certainly incredibly important to do that all the way through, and I think there's a lot of targeting elements that go on top from each one of these companies on the panel to do that.
So let's shift over to contextual and talking about relevance, right? So there's been this historic trend for TV advertisers to always look for show and episode when it comes to streaming. This is kind of a constant thing that everyone's looking for. There's been in the US certain privacy laws like the Video Privacy Protection Act that actually prevent you from sharing that information, which many broadcasters love because they don't want to share it anyway. They don't want their shows being cherry-picked. But it's kind of created this fragmentation, this problem, right, in terms of buyers who come from the TV side expect something. Digital buyers might be a little bit more used to contextual signals and kind of transacting on them, but often these teams are merged, right, and kind of dealing with these challenges in not consistent ways. So, Phil, it'd be great to hear a little bit more about some of the ways that GumGum is now creating new data signal in this market. A lot of folks, when we say AI contextual, it's not clear what that means. So if we could talk a little bit more about your technology and what you guys are doing, I think that'd be terrific.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think when you think of like signal loss, you think of the move from linear to, you know, CTV, OTT content. We're exactly to your point, we're trying to apply the way in which we bought traditional and linear into this environment. And there's still this just buying that's happening with, you know, show level data and description. And that's really all that's being available to the advertiser to buy. But what I think we don't realize is when I think contextual is maybe said like 7 times across the 4 groups up here, is that let's pull back on what contextual now can do for CTV. And so at GumGum, what we've done is we've built AI, machine-driven algorithm models that leverage and utilize all of the contextual signals at the frame level. So this isn't contextual like, oh, I'm going to buy, you know, I'm a sports brand going into a sports show. This is at the frame level. What is the audio? What's the visual? What's the emotion? What is happening at that moment to allow me as an advertiser to create a message that adds value? And so why that's so important is because as I think the advertiser dollars continue to flow in, right, to CTV, and they are going to and need that level of data to create, one, better experiences for users, to your point, more precision in the marketing efforts to drive the return on the ad spend. And so I think we use contextual. It's really important that we pull that up. Because GumGum right now, and I'm going to toot our own horn a little, right now we're the first and I believe right now only MRC accredited advanced contextual provider in CTV that looks at the frame level for safety, suitability, and contextual targeting. So when I'm sitting with the brands and we're having this conversation, they're like, wow, get into that stream, what's happening, and then this is the right moment. And it not only allows them to get that precision, it can feed back into what is happening contextually as then an insight into their overall activation and strategy. And so that's what we're excited about with the growth here. And it's awesome to hear all of these, my fellow peers here talking about how much that can add so much value, if that's helpful. So it's using the CV technologies, using the natural language processing technologies, and combining those into really, really specific understanding.
One comment I would add to that is, you take one provider, and doing that for one provider is certainly complex, but doing it across an entire ecosystem and having a common taxonomy, super hard, and having the AI being able to link those things across, super important, because Netflix may do it one way, CBS may do it another way, Paramount another way, not to mention the identity piece that Jean-Marc talked about. I mean, they all do that differently too. Yeah. So there's a lot of connecting those things that are hard to connect.
Totally agree.
Do we have that standardization? Because I'm learning here while I'm on the panel as well, but that's true. Different publishers have different custom taxonomies. Some DSPs have been really helpful to say, hey, this is how we'd like you to populate each of these signals with these particular values. But is there a one-size-fits-all taxonomy for contextual?
Well,
maybe Mike, you can talk about our work. We're not done yet. We've gotten quite a bit of scale, right? So it's growing, 50, 100% quarter over quarter in terms of signal adoption that we've seen in recent quarters. So this is having a standardized ID that replaces what was the web page URL. The web page URL was a consistent ID that you could scan a page, whether it was Google AdWords or IIS or DV or GumGum or all of the leading contextual brand safety suitability providers. They could store it on URL when that hit the bid stream and hit the buy side. You could just look up and say, hey, is this safe? Or is this travel? Or is this, a certain type of content, and then target the ad in milliseconds. That hasn't been available in CTV. That's what we've been working on solving with the IRIS ID. And, Mike, we've been working on that for a while, kind of getting it to scale. Like, what's your point of view in terms of where we are, right, and kind of getting that level of standardization?
I mean, it's definitely growing. I would say in general, so much of it is heavily reliant on the buy side to adopt it and being able to ensure that these major buyers are using this information that's being passed to them and leveraging it, because media companies want to be able to pre-filter and do different things with these different contextual elements. I think that if we continue to hit big media companies that want to be able to leverage this solution, and they're just going to push the buy side on it. So the more publishers that take on it and push it to the buy side, I think is the best outcome for everyone.
And this has been a little bit too complex, right? Like, I think in a single word, we're talking about stream words. I think Disney has done a great job to start to kind of bring this topic to the forefront. They're talking about things like magic words, right? Which is kind of contextual signals that they have at scale across the Disney pool. But to Sam's earlier point, if you're an advertiser, you don't just want to buy on Disney. And importantly, you actually need to make sure that the data is available in a consistent way, Jean-Marc, to kind of some of the things you were talking about, so that then on the buy side, you can actually learn like what signals worked. And you guys just did a lot of work in this area. It'd be great to hear.
So one thing I was going to say is that I'll make this practical for folks in the audience. So last year we launched a campaign with Experian. John Cena was the spokesperson for Experian. And so a good example was we knew that he appealed to a certain kind of audience, and they picked him specifically for stuff. And then we had Travis Kelce as a spokesperson as well. So being able to align the people that were highlighting the proposition, I mean, they were chosen very specifically into content that we know that they would stand out, and to consumers that, it magnified the message quite a bit. And so doing that at scale is super hard. I mean, you can't do that. And so something like an IRIS ID allows you to do that. And what I would sort of say again is it becomes very clear what kinds of content, what kinds of sentiment, what kinds of things pop when you're showing that, and doing more of that generally when it pops leads to the outcome piece, and it really leads to a repeatable sort of opportunity. And it's very hard without having that. How else are you going to understand why things worked or didn't work? And so just as a parallel to that too, we see companies like Amazon taking the same sort of idea, by the way, looking at the content and looking at outcomes and retail outcomes, and they're seeing that too. So I don't think this is unique. I think it's a real thing that, you know, gives buyers a whole nother way to, you know, what we would refer to as a playbook to kind of go buy differently and better and smarter.
Yeah, the two fastest trends in media, right? CTV, streaming TV, and then retail media. Jean-Marc, you were talking about kind of connecting some of these signals back and forth. It feels like kind of when you can actually tie together a targeting signal to something on the attribution side, and retail media is probably nothing better to do that. It's really exciting. Is there more you wanted to share on that tied to your data graph?
Yeah, for sure. It's very exciting, very difficult to make it happen. And here I think there are like probably two main challenges that we have to do. One is partnership. So for example, like partnership with OEMs is something that what we are doing, and it's necessary because you need to get the data at the source. Which is really very important, and this is something that because if you have like AI model or anything like this, you need to inform those models. So you need anyway to build those data partnerships, and you need like to build that community, and that goes a little bit to the same story as having like a standard in Contextual, etc. Because you need to build this partnership, and you need to have something, a common language. So that's the first thing. The second big challenge, and this is a little bit the devil in the house, right, is also changing the way people are buying media. So imagine we have like all our organizations, you have people buying media that have been doing this for 20 years, 25 years, and this is a completely different way. You were buying, even like 10 years ago, you were buying media like to networks. Today, you are buying media based on the content because the users follow the content. That's a completely different thing. It was already tied to the content at some point, but today the content comes first before the entity you are buying the media from. So this is a big challenge as well.
Well, the research that PMG put forward, I think, is doing kind of a lot for the market, right? Because we're starting to see the kind of signals that GumGum enables, for example, how performant they are. Just some data on this. There's a research group that we're a part of called AVCA, found that viewers are 4 times less likely to watch the ad if it's not relevant to the content. So it's a big difference. And then they're much more likely to actually purchase a product, have the intent to purchase a product, actually go through and show up in the store if it is aligned with the content.
And that's what I'd like to add. I think there's two things with when we look at how we're approaching this, GumGum, is clearly the understanding at that frame level is key, right? And all this is a huge, exactly the fragmentation that's happening in CTV. The supply is vast. You have walled or you have the Netflixes, what would be deemed people with premium content, all this fast opportunity, and then all these independent content creators. So the ability for them to be able to independently be able to monetize and find an amazing pocket of opportunity for an advertiser there through some standardization is key within the advanced contextual space. Now, additionally, I think we need to understand we're also similar to what we've done in linear. We are transitioning the same ad experiences into CTV, and there's so much opportunity in the creative. So with GumGum, we look at the frame level, but it's matching the frame with now maybe overlays that fit perfectly, allow you as the consumer to stay engaged, right? New cost-efficient ways to match and allow me to stay engaged. Where because combined with the ineffectiveness or lack of as effective contextual signals can provide in the outcome for the ad, the existing ads are still being skipped, fast forward, and not engaged. So what are we looking at the moment to create a moment that I can leverage with creative that is new and unique? The squeeze backs, all the things we're starting to see where brands are showing up in the frame of video, I think is a big opportunity in CTV, but it's that standardization, it's the leveraging of contextual to find that moment. And I think that's where you start to really tap into the mindset. And then to your point, you're grabbing the attention and the attribution, and you're able to tie that right back to an action or ROAS for the advertiser.
I could probably learn all day from this group, but we're probably going to get kicked off here pretty soon. Mike, you guys just had a big announcement with Roku. I think the kind of changes happening at Roku and kind of the openness, given the size of that platform, is super exciting. Is there anything you want to share about that? Because I think they also have indicated a lot of kind of new movements towards transparency.
Yeah, so we've been partners with them since 2017. They've leveraged different elements of our technology stack. I think for what he's specifically asking about is they're now willing to be able to create and spend more time with allowing buyers to pass things more through the bid signals in the actual platform. And so that's been a bit different and a huge change of pace for them. So it's really exciting to help power that with them. And I think it's a common trend that we could see more and more of as it relates to things like contextual and different specific identifiers that gets passed through.
We didn't talk much about free ad-supported streaming, but that's where so much growth is happening. And Ed, it'd be great kind of wrapping up here. Yeah. You guys have such a big footprint. Obviously, US has been kind of leading the charge because of people cutting the cord and using free ad-supported streaming. What are you seeing internationally? Where are the kind of biggest growth areas? What are you really excited about for the year ahead?
I think in general, streaming is growing. There's a long heritage of free-to-air broadcast in Europe, right? So we see a lot of streaming time happening within the broadcaster platforms as well as AVOD platforms. I guess what I'm most excited about is that, some of the experiences we're now delivering on the home screen, screensaver ads, pause ads, we're actually starting to deliver upon the future of TV, right? With streaming becoming the primary viewing mechanism, it's opening up a lot more creative opportunities, but also everything we've been discussing today around contextual.
Well, it's really great to be up here with such an excellent group of panelists. And I think what's so exciting about Contextual, all of its privacy first. We don't have to be kind of like creepy about the information we're collecting. And I think increasingly as data laws change and these technology changes occur, it's just exciting to hear that it's working so effectively. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.